like to open the broadcast by saying that Jill Biden, FLOTUS, First Lady of the United States, rocked her outfit, which included fishnet black stockings. And that's all I have to say about that. Completely all. I'm not going to play whataboutism with Melania Trump. Nope, no. Can't get me to stop talking about meatier topics with that. So whatever outrage the right want to respond to, I'm going to treat it as a perennial noise-generating machine to distract from issues that affect the American people. And one of those issues is that people can sometimes get stuck in a blame dynamic where you just are hypercritical of individuals. And that hypercriticality of individuals may be a product of helplessness, that you want to feel protected. You want to not feel anxious that anything bad will happen to you or your family. And so when bad things do happen to people around you or in the news, you push that anxiety down by virtue of focusing on somebody else's actions and saying, well, they did something which I wouldn't do, therefore I'm safe, and they have brought this bad thing upon themselves. And that is a function of helplessness that's not necessarily even conscious, but is potentially a product of not having belief in big government anymore, not believing that it would even be possible for government to do anything, collective leadership to do anything to improve circumstances for people so that harms were mitigated, risks were reduced, and prosperity and health and community spirit was promoted. Marsha's here. Hello. She says, hi, Dav. Hope all is well, which is lovely. So nice to see you. I hope I'm not keeping you up, but I'll try and do a short broadcast. And when my kids are back at school, maybe the broadcast will get a bit earlier. At the moment, not so much. Kids, I keep giving them food and they're hungry, and it's because they're growing. It's very important to just keep feeding them until they say they're not hungry anymore. Just keep going. What have I made today? Popcorn and chopped carrot and strawberries. Anyway, let's talk about the next thing I want to say, which is an unsafe work environment. Because people are pointing out that's an underreported on dimension of the Matt Gaetz reporting that suggests he showed pictures of naked women to people in his workplace, and that would be critical in creating an uncomfortable position for women who are trying to work in a professional environment and would surely expect in America's key political building, the Capitol, the home of the legislative branch of government, that they would have a professional environment to work in and not an environment in which women were being demeaned by having naked photos of them shared without their consent in order to glorify Republican Representative Matt Gaetz's desire to dominate women by making them into sexual conquests rather than people. Marcia says, always hungry. Yes, and I presume you're talking about children, or you may be talking about yourself. Both may be accurate. My children are certainly always hungry because they are children. Yes, Henry notes, let's not forget he's at work. Exactly. He's at work, and so are the other women in Congress who, being confronted by the circulation of naked imagery of women, should we assume that they know this is happening? Should we assume that Matt Gaetz is showing this to people secretively on the floor of Congress? But should we also assume that no matter how secretively he attempts to make that process of glorifying his ability to show off naked pictures of women, potentially underage women, but as far as we know at the moment, it's women. And when I say underage women, you're supposed to say girls, a 17-year-old girl. because a 17-year-old girl is the subject, allegedly, of an investigation into Joel Greenberg trafficking. Joel Greenberg, a Florida tax collector, friend of Matt Gaetz, allegedly trafficked a 17-year-old girl who was then sexually involved in a way that is under the legal age of consent with both Gaetz and Greenberg. So sexual trafficking across borders, alleged drug use of ecstasy, exchange of sexual favors for cash and drugs. And what I hadn't heard before was that the CCTV footage of Gaetz and his friend Joel Greenberg involved Greenberg rummaging through bins where there were discarded driver's licenses. Phil says, no apologies necessary. Enjoy them while they're young. Thanks, Phil. And Marsha said children. Yes, she clarified that it's children that's always hungry. No argument with that. Children are always hungry. They're always growing. Now, something we should talk about today is that Donald Trump appears to have pioneered some methods, or his supporters have pioneered methods of fleecing their supporters by including checked boxes. So I'm still here, but I'm sharing the New York reporting on the subject. So I'll put it in one corner of the page. Oh, I just need to tell my husband something. Darling, it sounds like it's raining. Are there any windows open?
Yeah, there are lots of windows open.
Could you close the windows then, sweetheart? I'm broadcasting. All right, so let's have a look. It's quite the tragic part of this story is the amount that people refuse to blame Trump and instead blame the collection agency. But anyway, I'll read you some of the story. Let's have a quick look at the headline. How Trump steered supporters into unwitting donations. Online donors were guided into weekly recurring contributions. Demands for refunds spiked. Complaints to banks and credit cards companies soared, but the money helped keep Donald Trump's struggling campaign afloat. Now, I think this is really key to consider, given the context of so many people who claim that Donald Trump delusionally thinks that he won the election. It's like, nope. I would be prepared to accept that Donald Trump could pass a lie detector when he lies because he's such a practiced liar that I think he could fit on a continuum of what's called confabulation, which is some people who've had brain damage for certain reasons, maybe alcohol abuse, they can lie to the point where psychiatrists describe their lies as confabulation because they might really believe it. Or people with dementia whose ability to have accurate recall is so impaired that they'll just say what comes into their head, and for them it possibly is true. So they might say it with a strong degree of conviction because they want to be right. They don't want to be in a situation where their memory is impaired. And so there might be a degree of uneasiness at some level of their body, but they could still probably almost certainly pass a lie detector test. So when people say, oh, Trump believes he won, he's just honestly trying to persuade people of the truth, I think at least some consideration should be given to the counter argument that he absolutely knows he did not win, that Joe Biden outraised him in terms of money, that it's not a surprise, that he knows that Trump didn't win in a landslide, as he continues to proclaim through his little announcements. And yes, so this is how Trump supporters were ripped off. I notice we have a little Trump troll insisting, embarrassingly for her, that he won. But let's look at how he instead milked his supporters for a lot of money and how they did it, because this is the way that Republican politicians in general now will presumably try to replicate the process of squeezing a lot of money out of their supporters. So this is a story to begin with of Stacey Blatt. She was in hospice care last September, listening to Rush Limbauer's dire warnings about how badly Donald J. Trump's campaign needed money when he went online. And so he chipped in everything he could, $500. Now, that's not a gender term error. It's a man. His first name is Stacey. Good for him. It was a big sum for a 63-year-old battling cancer and living in Kansas City on less than $1,000 per month. Oh my God. Less than $1,000 per month, 63 years old, battling cancer. But he so enthralled to Donald Trump and that promise of security and looking after America's best interests, because that's what Fox News sells, that your safety is compromised by migrants. Your safety is compromised by people of black skin color, insisting that they be given equal protection under the law. The sanctity of heterosexual marriage is compromised by the insistence of people from the LGBTQ community asking for equal protection under the law. And that was such a righteous cause to him. And Donald Trump was so much the embodiment of an Uncle Sam savior that this 63-year-old gave $500, half of the amount of money he has to survive for a whole month. But what happened next? That single contribution, federal records show that it was his first ever, quickly multiplied. Another $500 was withdrawn the next day, then $500 next week, and then every week through mid-October, without his knowledge, until Mr. Blatt's bank account had been depleted and frozen. When his utility and rent payments bounced, he called his brother Russell for help. What the Blatts soon discovered was $3,000 in withdrawals by the Trump campaign in less than 30 days. They called their bank and said they thought they were victims of fraud. It felt, Russell said, like it was a scam. So can you believe it? Can you believe that somebody, for the first time ever, made a political donation? They were so moved by Rush Limbaugh's commentary that the Trump campaign was in such dire need of help that this man living on $1,000 a month gave $500 to the Trump campaign. And then they immediately took out a second $500 the next day and another $500 the next week. This is indicative of the entire approach of Trump and Republicans to the American people. They will squeeze you for any penny you have without compunction or remorse. The only factor in how much they squeeze out of you is how gullible you are, how much do you allow them to get away with, because they will, yes. So listen to how they went about this. What the Blatts believed was duplicity was actually an intentional scheme to boost revenues by the Trump campaign and the for-profit company that processed its online donations, which is called WinRed. Now, WinRed is the Republican equivalent to ActBlue, the Democratic the company that processes donations to Democratic people. ActBlue does not charge any fees for processing donations. WinRed is a for-profit company and does charge fees. And political organizations are compelled to give refunds if people request them under certain circumstances. Some of the circumstances are that perhaps the donation amount has exceeded the limit. What's the limit? Is it $2,400 that an individual can donate? But yeah, so refunds are processed by both parties, but you'll soon hear the extraordinary amount processed by the Trump campaign after the election and after people started checking their bank accounts. So facing a cash crunch and getting badly outspent by the Democrats, the campaign had begun last September to set up recurring donations by default for online donors for every week until the election. Contributors had to wade through a fine print disclaimer and manually uncheck a box to opt out. As the election neared, the Trump team made that disclaimer increasingly opaque, i.e. increasingly difficult to easily understand and process. So the investigation by the New York Times showed this. It showed they introduced a second pre-checked box known internally as a money bomb that doubled a person's contribution. So that's why when Stacey Blatt was like, I'll make the biggest donation I possibly can to this poor, in-need Trump campaign, gave them $500. The very next day, it doubled his donation. He was charged a second $500. Eventually, the Trump campaign solicitations featured lines of text in bold and capital letters that visually overwhelmed the opt-out language. The tactic ensnared scores of unsuspecting Trump loyalists, retirees, military veterans, nurses, and even experienced political operatives. Soon, banks and credit card companies were inundated with fraud complaints from the president's own supporters about donations they had not intended to make, sometimes for thousands of dollars. Bandits, said Victor Emiliano, a 78-year-old Californian who made a $990 online donation to Trump in early September via WinRed. It reoccurred 7 more times, adding up to almost $8,000. I'm retired. I can't afford to pay all that damn money. Now, the big picture here is of what happened. Is that they got all this money because they needed to try and compete with Biden. And a lot of people were donating to Biden and Harris. It was promising for once that America might get a way out of the dysfunction and the criminality and the population abuse of living under Trumpism, where he lied to Americans about the severity of a pandemic. He failed to permit or organize or conduct in any way, shape, or form an appropriate federal response. He just played that game that many individuals like to play, what I've referred to previously in this broadcast as the blame game. So he shifted from wrongly diminishing the significance of the pandemic to instead trying to funnel people's concerns into blame and resentment towards the Chinese government. And he did so not by using the word government, by just saying China, it's the Chinese virus, knowing that xenophobic people have a worldview that causes them to experience very strong tribalistic emotions, to feel that they're protecting the in-group by hating and resenting the out-group, so that they were like a field to be plowed of people saying, we're ready, give us permission, and we will hate and blame Chinese people. And consequently, violent attacks have risen significantly on African-American people all over the United States. So family members, including children, have been stabbed. People have been kicked and punched and beaten and all manner of awful crimes. And you know that that's the tip of the iceberg of the people who have all supped on that same hateful rhetoric, that same Kool-Aid of demagogic, emotional manipulation to say, unleash your hatred here. Instead of expecting anything from your federal government in terms of effective leadership, just hate. Hate will protect you. Hate Chinese people or people of Asian appearance. Trump knows that humanity has a dark side and that you can cultivate it and weaponize it. His bedside reading used to be the collected speeches of Hitler. His first ex-wife, Ivana Trump, told a reporter from Vanity Fair years ago, or rather revealed in court documents to do with her divorce, that Trump had My New Order, a collection of Hitler's speeches, on his bedside table. And the journalist then asked Trump, her name's Marie Brenner, by the way. She asked Trump in 1995, did your cousin give you that book of speeches from Hitler? And Trump said, oh, who told you that? No, my Jewish friend gave it to me, Marty Davis from Paramount. And the journalist, Marie Brenner, then interviewed Marty Davis about it and said, did you give Trump the book of Hitler's speeches? Marty Davis said, yes, I did. I thought he might find it interesting, but I'm not Jewish. So confirmed. By all account, you don't have to take Trump's word for it when he subsequently then said, oh, no, that's not true, and poured a glass of champagne on Marie Brenner at a party. Obviously, he understood that it was going to be damaging for him to have people know and to have it broadly circulated that he owned a copy of Hitler's collected speeches and that he's not renowned for his interest in history. So yes, Trump definitely brought out the hate that was brewing under the surface, and he weaponized it in a symbiotic fashion with Fox News that also escalated their hatred and their ability to cultivate hate in their audience. Yes. All right, so back we go where we're still looking into the psyche of people who think it wise to donate lots of money to Trump. So all campaigns make refunds for various reasons, including to people who give more than the legal limit. But the sum that the Trump operation refunded dwarfed that of Joe Biden Jr.'s campaign and his equivalent Democratic committees. So they made some refunds, the Democrats, $5.6 million worth of refunds. Again, refunds to people who've paid more than the legal limit. But the Trump campaign issued $64.3 million. Okay, so you know what? We can do an average here because I'll get out my calculator. The Trump campaign issued 64.3 million. Okay, so that's divided by 533,000. So that means the average refund was $121. Okay, and then the Democratic campaign, 5.6 million. Okay, oops, not times. Divided by 37,000. Dang it. $151. Oh, so they're similar amounts. I guess people overpaying and things, but similar amounts in terms of an average refund. But 330,000 refunds made by the Trump campaign compared to 37,000 for Joe Biden. So that's fairly significantly different by a factor of, all right, let's see, how many times? Okay, by a factor of 14. So the recurring donations swelled Trump's treasury in September and October just as his finances were deteriorating. He was then able to use the tens of millions of dollars he raised after the election under the guise of fighting his unfounded fraud claims to help cover the refunds he owed. So all that time when Trump said, oh, yep, I'm raising money to fight my legal battles, he wasn't really paying his lawyers very much, and he was certainly outraising whatever he needed, but he was able to use those lawyer funds that he was raising to pay the people who had at least kept enough of an eye on the ball to notice what Trump had done to their bank account, namely surreptitiously charge them over and over again, doubling their initial donation and then repeating those extra charges every week until the election. Craig says, hello, Dav and family and viewers. And that the bad lady has gone entirely away, which is great. I wonder if Haps did something. She definitely was spamming the channel, and it is distracting. So thank you guys for taking care of that. Much appreciated. Ooh, my children are playing a song now, which I was singing yesterday. And it was helping me process some of the feelings of disappointment and frustration that I experienced having a family member support Trump. So at some point, I might sing it for everybody. Probably needs a little bit of work. My children appear to be enjoying themselves quite a lot. Okay, so who is this man here? It's Russell Blatt, whose brother Stacy had his bank account emptied rather stressfully. I mean, imagine living with terminal cancer and being unable to pay your rent and your utility bills because your bank account has been emptied by this egregious profiteering at the expense of employees. So a user experience designer in London called Harry Brignall coined the term dark patterns for manipulating digital marketing practices, said that Trump's team techniques were a classic of the deceptive design genre. And what I just want to do is show you. So, oh, look, this is the graph, and it sort of shows that in June, they added a second pre-filled checkbox and then began to have online donations occur weekly by default. And that really did help. Also, no, this is not a graph of donations. This is a graph of refunds. Refunds to Trump donors soaring in 2020. So, whereas the refund line for Biden is staying steady because they aren't doing any critically unethical things. I might just make that the whole screen for a second so you can see. So there you go, that red line of Trump. These are the refunds. It's quite an extraordinary sum of money. And then below, there are total refunds in 2020 in millions, 122 million in refunds from Trump, and Biden 21. All right, so I'll put myself back on the screen. Hello again. Paul says, good morning. Marsha says, I watched some Trump supporters and realized how they were swiftly swept up into the culture they believed supported them. There's a certain synergy to it, isn't it? Group activity, being around people who think the same way. There's a unity in sharing the same enemies and being really morally clear about who your enemies are. So I think polling has shown recently that more Americans are prepared to blame corporations for the underfunding of America's infrastructure, for the crumbling of roads and bridges and water supply systems. I think they understand that corporations are to blame for some of these things, corporate underpaying of taxes, big companies like Amazon and Walmart and McDonald's paying so little in tax and so little in wages in many cases that they're really enhancing their profit margins at the expense of taxpayers who then have to step in to ensure Americans don't starve to death in the streets. So something I heard that was really quite shocking was that Walmart, when they train you, you accept a position for employment with Walmart and you turn up. Part of your training is that they give you an application forms for SNAP, for food stamps. So they're saying, hello, welcome to walking at Walmart. This is where the safety exits are. This is how you'll get paid. But just so you know, apply for food stamps straight away because your salary won't be adequate to put food on the table for you. So we'll be paying you so little. We'll be preserving our billions of dollars of familial wealth by making sure that you stay employed with us. But yep, you will need help to be able to ingest enough calories to continue your miserable existence. So that's part of their training on the first day for employees, which is extraordinary. And the way more Americans have come to understand that is probably thanks to writers who have built some of that knowledge into television shows and made it more a topic of conversation. So I watched a cartoon called BoJack Horseman yesterday, and they were explaining vertical integration. It was really good to just have a thirst for knowledge piqued by a cartoon show. And I thought, these conversations about climate change, about corporatism, essentially corporate socialism, where any risks that wealthy corporate executives take is protected through taxpayer-provided cushions. So if they lose money, they'll be bailed out. There'll be tax breaks to protect them from collapse. But if their risk succeeds, then they will reap the benefits of that, and people will say, oh, well, they earned their billions of dollars, they took a risk. But they didn't really, because the risk was not of falling because they took those risks in the knowledge that they had enough political influence to be able to buy a taxpayer-funded cushion. They didn't have to buy it, to expect a taxpayer-funded cushion for any fall. And taking it back to Trump's squeezing of his of money from his supporters, it shows that they're not the real constituents of Republicans. Republicans see them more as marks, and wealthy people are the true constituents that Republicans will actually work for and work to benefit. And that's why they have to try and restrict voting as much as possible, and that's why they also call all of the proposed infrastructure bills, they say it's so full of pork, when what it's full of is proposals to benefit Americans, to deliver broadband to all areas of rural America, to enhance connectivity and opportunity for people who live in this allegedly first world, very wealthy, highly industrialized country, to make the benefits more appropriately dispersed rather than concentrated in the upper echelons of a feudal tier system. So working class people who vote for Republicans have been tricked into voting against their own interests, their own financial interests, through appeal to loyalty to their beliefs about how to best protect the fabric of society. But what we have to do is resist that urge to make sweeping generalizations, and instead make sweeping generalizations cautiously with an eye to understanding, and to push through that description to find common grounds of agreement, because the infrastructure bill is actually very popular. Sweetheart, I know you're having fun, but Mummy is broadcasting, and you can still have fun and not scream, sweetie. Because my husband's also trying to, oh God. Yes, as Phil notes efficiently, the losses are often socialized and the profits are privatized, meaning that, hello darling, sweetie, can you make sure you don't scream so much? So Phil says so many Trump and Bernie supporters were angered over the lack of criminal accountability of the 2008 meltdown. Thanks to the high five award, Paul. High five. Oh yes, and happy Easter to people who celebrate Easter. Yes. So where was the lack of criminal accountability? Because banks were bailed out for being too big to fail, and it became more evident that the legal system is not just organized to punish or deter people from committing crimes. It's to punish and deter people who commit physical property crimes, but not large-scale corruption crimes. White-collar crimes is a term I try and avoid using because it implies that people employed in professional positions are white. Like, it doesn't, formally apply that, but it subtly implies that. So I prefer to find a different term. I haven't found one yet, but my goal is to find a different term for those type of crimes, so other than white-collar crimes. Professional corruption, I'm going to say maybe corruption crimes of corruption. If you have a better thought, share. I'm welcoming of those, of people brainstorming ideas for linguistic merit. You have to catch it. All right. When the New York Times was doing this investigation, they reviewed filings with the Federal Election Commission from both the Trump and the Biden campaigns. A clear pattern emerged Donors typically said they intended to give once or twice and only later discovered on their bank statements and credit card bills that they were donating over and over again. Unlike Mr. Blatt, who died of cancer in February, sought an injunction from their banks and credit cards. Others pursued refunds directly from WinRed, which typically granted them to avoid more costly formal disputes. But think about it, it's the tip of the iceberg, because imagine how many Trump supporters there are going, oh, well, maybe they just really needed the money and he can have it and I shouldn't pursue it. Craig had a good Easter because he's into Easter egg hunts only. Yes. Jason Miller said, blah, 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 lies. He said we had a dispute rate of less than 1% of total donations, and that still amounts to 200,000 disputed transactions that Mr. Miller said added up to 19.7 million, but it was more than that, wasn't it? It was, he's saying 19.7 million. How many million did I say before? Oh, well, the New York Times found it. Mr. Trump's hyper-aggressive fundraising practices did not stop once he lost the election. His campaign continued the weekly withdrawals with pre-checked boxes all the way through December the 12th, as he raised tens of millions of dollars for his new political action committee, Save America. Well, this is all squeezing facilitated by the Citizens United decision from the Supreme Court, isn't it? This is where we finally get to the small box. This is the yellow box. So this was first used in March 2020, and it's a pre-checked box that occurs on the form where you're signing up to donate, and it says, make this a monthly recurring donation. So that is in bold letters, and you can see the tiny little blue square that's got a tick inside it. So it's pre-ticked. It means to not do that, you have to opt out. So you sign up, you say, I'm going to give them $100. And if you don't read the yellow box, you're having $100 automatically taken out of your account each month. Then what was the next box? Then Ronna McDaniel, she used to be called Ronna Romney McDaniel, but she cut the Romney out of her name at Trump's request when he didn't want to be reminded of Mitt Romney. She crowed to Fox News about the achievement without mentioning exactly how the party was achieving it. She said Republicans are thinking smarter digitally and were poised to outwork, outdo, and outmaneuver the Democrats at every turn. So now there's two boxes. Make this a monthly recurring donation. And then another one. Let's break a fundraising record on President Trump's birthday. Join now. That is also pre-checked. And then there's some small writing underneath that says, this additional donation will process on the 14th of the 6th. Okay, because it says 6/14 and Americans put the month first, so that's June. So March they had one yellow box. June they've got two yellow boxes with two pre-ticked ones. So the first one is making your donation into a monthly donation, and the second one is just going to double your donation specifically on Trump's birthday. Imagine how many people would just have not disputed that, who would have gone, okay, well, I didn't financially plan to donate to Trump on his birthday, but I evidently agreed to it. Buyer beware. What's buyer beware in Latin? Is it re ipsa loquitur? Buyer beware. Oh, caveat emptor, yeah. I like to learn Latin phrases. Caveat emptor. Okay, so until this point in June, the Biden and Trump operations had nearly identical refund rates, 2.18% for Trump and 2.17% for Biden. So they're both equivalently refunding to people who've changed their mind or who have exceeded the amount that you can legally donate. But the day after Trump's birthday, through the rest of the year, Biden's refund rate remained nearly flat at 2.24%, while Trump's soared to 12.29%. In September, just after learning that it had been outraised by the Biden operation in August by more than $150 million. Yay, Biden supporters. The Trump campaign became even more aggressive. It changed the language in the first yellow box to withdraw reoccurring donations every week instead of every month. Suddenly, some contributors were unwittingly making as much as half a dozen donations in 30 days. The intended contribution, the money bomb the day after, and 4 more weekly withdrawals. So this yellow box top one now says, make this a weekly recurring donation until November the 3rd. And the second box has quite a lot of bold text. President Trump, I debate Joe Biden on September 29th, and I need to know that I have your support. Join the Trump Cash Blitz now. And in smaller letters, donate an additional $100 automatically on 9/29, so the 29th of September. Okay, wow. So 2 boxes. One signing you up automatically to weekly deductions from your account, and a second one deducting $100 on the date that Joe Biden was to debate Trump. They did debate, didn't they? And it was reportedly really hard to watch because Trump didn't obey the typical rules of civil interaction. And was apparently trained to try and badger Biden until he stuttered because they wanted to obtain footage of Biden looking weak. They understood that American receptivity towards presidential candidates is a function of how alpha they perceive them to be. Paul says the only tick I would give Trump would be a tick in the guilty box for the murder of 400,000 US citizens. That's fair. And the good news about that, not that it's ever good news when your citizens have been effectively murdered by the president and his enablers, is that I see a lot of people on Twitter saying it's good. I mean, Twitter is the home of the chattering classes, not necessarily just the elite. There's pundits, there's journalists, but there's also a lot more people who are very intense about politics on both the left and right sides, but the middle does not feature on Twitter so much. So when the chattering classes at least become more consistent in their denunciation, so not just cynical and saying, oh, well, what can you expect from Trump? Of course he murders 500,000 people. They're not saying, of course. They're saying that man has effectively committed pandemicide against the American people, and there should be consequences. That man incited an insurrection, and there should be consequences for him and the people who were part of that plot to overturn the election results and reconfigure them in Trump's favor by using the might of amassed Trump supporters who were so programmed to believe that they were part of a righteous cause, that they would possibly forfeit their lives, that they would possibly forfeit their freedom and commit jailable offenses, that they would also be really confident in believing they wouldn't face jail time because if they restored Trump to office for a second term, that Trump would then obviously reward them for what they had done on his behalf. All right, so those yellow boxes really are quite something, and it's quite something to consider how people can be manipulated in that way. So you don't realize it until after everything is already in motion, said Bruce Turner, 72, of Arizona, whose wife's $1,000 donation in early October became $6,000 by election day. So all those people like Mr. Turner and his wife, they need refunds because they notice. They made significantly big donations to Trump that it exceeds the legal limit for donations. So Trump got an interest-free loan from hundreds of thousands of his unwitting supporters that ultimately they had to refund, and that they had a campaign of please stop the steal, please help me with my legal efforts. That was fundamentally a way to get enough money to pay back those interest-free fraud loans obtained by deception. Hi, sweetheart.
I'm hungry.
Are you hungry? What would you like to eat?
Chocolate and peppermint.
Oh, we don't have Any more bread?
I'll
I
get
don't
the
know.
bread.
You're going to get the bread?
You? Yeah, with money.
Oh, you're going to do that? You're going to get all the coins out again?
So this time, can I put them in?
Yeah.
And tell me the number so I can this time do it. Except I don't miss any mistakes, so I know the number.
Okay, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but you collect all the coins and you try and count them, okay? Remember, look at the value. You might need to write it down on a piece of paper because you're trying to get up to $2.50, okay?
How much coins is that?
Well, it's not how many coins. Remember, the coins have different values. So it takes two 50 cents.
Do you need like $25?
No, not $25. $2.50. So you need, you can group them in groups of $1. So it takes two 50-cent coins to make $1.
Hold on.
Okay.
Mommy,
I'll write it down for you. Look.
how much money is that?
So look, I'm going to write here $2.50. Okay. You need some 50-cent coins. So you look and you find some 50-cent coins, okay? Because two of them equals $1.
So we need two.
Well, you need to get $1, but then you need also to get another $1.50, which means $1 plus $1
So do you
plus
need
50 cents.
$4.50?
No. Oh yeah, you could use 4 50-cent coins and then another one. You could use 4. But I think you've got 2 50-cent coins, and I think to make $1 with 20-cent coins, you need 5 of them. Okay. So you try and get that, and then come show Mummy.
5 of these.
5 of those, that would be $1.
5,
and then 2 of those would be $1.
Okay.
And then you would need 50 more cents as well. And you could get that by having 5 of the 10-cent coins. Okay, you try and do that. That's going to be a little project. Craig says he's so happy Joe Biden won. Could you imagine if Trump was still in office? Yes, I can, because we have Brazil to look at as an example where a very transmissible and deadly variant of COVID-19 is ravaging their country, and their hospital systems are getting overwhelmed. Oh, internet feeling happy right now. Tell me, can you still hear me talk? It's like right now I'm just seeing a frozen screen, even when the screen is frozen. I'm just wondering, talking when the screen is frozen. I'll keep talking because I'll set because there are some boxes. It says join the president's exhibits only. Make this a reoccurring donation until because it's supposed to be a message from end of quarter MVP. Join the cash blitz now and make it official. Donate an additional $100 automatically on the 30th of September. As the campaign's financial problems became increasingly acute, the yellow boxes became dizzyingly more complex. By October, there were sometimes 9 lines of bold-faced text with all caps words sprinkled in before the disclosure that there would be weekly withdrawals. As many as 8 more lines of bold-faced text came before the additional donation disclaimer. I'm really glad the New York Times did an expose about this. Okay, so it's a little bit choppy, but you can still hear me. Thank you. Oh, and Kelly just subscribed. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so look at these boxes. You probably can't read it. They're very small, but I just need you to see that there is a lot of text there, and most of that text is bold black nonsense garbage to distract you from reading the tiny little line at the very bottom. The first box says, make this a weekly recurring donation until November the 3rd. And the second one, blah, 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 blah. October the 9th marks 29, 5 days out from Election Day, and we need your support. American patriots like you inspired me to keep fighting this past week, and I'm not done yet. I'm asking you to join Operation MAGA and help me secure victory in November. Join the movement now. And tiny letters, donate an additional $1. Almost have enough? Okay. Mummy's wallet is in the first drawer. Do you know where we keep the masks? You can pull that drawer out, Mummy. You know what Mummy's wallet looks like. I'm asking you to join MAGA and help me secure victory in November. Join the movement now. Donate an additional $100 automatically.
Is this your wallet?
Yes, that's my wallet. Good work. Even political professionals fell prey to the boxes. So Jeff Kropf is the executive director of the Oregon. Can you pass it to me? Oh, maybe we took the coins out before. Oh, maybe we took them out before when we were collecting them. So maybe they're still on top of that drawer. So I mean, it's nearly time for Mummy to say goodbye. Have you put all the coins in like that red little wallet that you have, so we can carry them all? So yeah. So this executive director of a group called the Oregon Capital Watch Foundation, a conservative group, said he had been very careful to uncheck recurring boxes, yet he missed the money bond one, the $100.
Yep. 3 more tens.
3 more tens? Yeah.
I have 2 5s which equal 10 and 1 10 which equals
That
only
equals
2.
Yeah.
So
you've got 2 5s. Did you have 5 of the 20-cent ones as well?
I have all. Yeah,
How much do you think?
All the other groups are white because I didn't have 50, so we spent too much of my 50s on the other part of my money. So yeah.
Okay. So then maybe you just need to check on the top of that drawer and just feel with your hand to see if you can fill any more coins up the top.
Because I already wasted some of my tens to help make the 50. Because I know 20 plus 20 equals 40.
Correct.
Plus 1 more would equal 50. So
Correct.
I wasted all my tens.
You didn't mean you wasted. You just used them to count up to the total so far. That's not wasting. All right. So check up the top if you can feel any more coins up the top.
What coins?
I think there are some coins up the top of the drawer, baby.
This drawer?
Yeah, like on the top, darling. All right, so I think I'm nearly about to have to go. Look at all these people in little MAGA masks. They are predominantly white people. There's even some twins in one corner. But anyway, these are presumably people who go to sleep at night telling themselves that they are patriots and that they support America. So Phil is going to bed, and Black Dutch school, who's called Jonette's, unusual name, says the entire 45th presidency was a huge con. Indeed, would agree. I've been talking for nearly an hour, so I'll say goodbye and I'll go on a bread buying adventure with my daughter. But take care, everybody. I think we can do more to hold the press to account by asking them questions. As a speech pathologist, I know it often helps people when they have a script. So I'm going to try and use Twitter, which a lot of people in power complain about because, yes, the hoi polloi can get rowdy and noisy and aggravating, and they can keep challenging the wisdom of others, which I'm sure would be very irritating if you were a pundit or a journalist to constantly be challenged on the wisdom of your utterances. But at the same time, that's got a cool element to it. And if we write out some questions, so we make an assertion and we say, hey, why aren't journalists focusing on the fact that the Georgian voter suppression laws signed by Governor Kemp, Republican Governor Kemp, it's not just about making it a crime to give food and water to people waiting in long lines because there are too few ballot boxes open in areas where people are predominantly of color. But there are other laws that transfer power into the hands of state legislatures in Republican-controlled state senates. So, i.e., if those laws had been in effect when Trump was trying to contest the results of the election, it just would be easier for them to get that result. They'd be like, yep, sure thing, President Trump. We have overruled the certification. We have said, yep, we don't like it, therefore it's not valid, and Trump won the election. So those are questions that need to be asked, and they need to be asked frequently and prominently.
I have 2 good pieces. I have enough, but and the second good news is I didn't need 6 of them because I had enough. That and left 6 more coins left.
Okay, so what are you going to carry in? You're going to get a little container for us to take it all down, all those coins downstairs without dropping them? Oh, wow. Oh, my God, Marsha. Marsha just donated a huge broadcast award. I'm just going to, wow. Marsha, thank you, Marsha. I can't believe that. And somebody else called Better Well says, bless you, great job. My gosh, Marsha. Phew. I can't believe you did that. Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very encouraging. Let's go down to get the bread. Okay, so can you come and say goodbye?
Goodbye.
And can you say thank you with me as well?
Thank you.
And particularly, let's say thank you to Marsha because she was really generous. Do you know what she gave us? $10 for broadcasting, for a good broadcast. Yes. She says, you're very welcome. And Craig says, thanks for the great show. And Marsha says, bye. And I mean, she's not the only person who gave awards, so we shouldn't neglect other people. Let's say Phil and Paul also gave us awards, so we say thank you. That's how this broadcasting system works. If people like what you're doing, they can say, here, have some money. We want you to know we think you're doing a good job. Keep it up. That's how rewards work. Marsha says, use well. Yes, we will spend money responsibly when we don't. Yes.
And we don't just do it oh, okay, I just gotta spend this on the dirt, yeah.
Yeah, we won't buy dirt with it. Although if we had a garden, we could buy dirt. That would be
No,
cool.
but what if we only bought dirt? So imagine this: we're rich and we only buy dirt with all our money, and then we're poor and we only have dirt.
Yeah. Buying just dirt would not be a sound investment of our money.
And you're rich. Why do you buy dirt?
Well, if you're rich, you could buy dirt as part of your expenses.
No, but that's all you buy.
Yeah,
dirt.
if it's the only thing you buy, then yeah, not very sensible. Oh, look, and Paul says, bye, little one.
Yeah, thank you.
And Marsha says she needs a journal for her stories. That means she thinks she tells good stories, and we should get a journal so you can write them down. I think you write good stories. Oop. All right. Take care, everybody. Well, we'll go buy bread. Have a lovely day. Have a good rest. Thank you again so much. That's not comfortable, Cheeky. That was too much poking. All right, let's say bye.
Bye.
Bye.